Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
you gotta be confident about your Achilles.
Chase Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
All right. Welcome back into Operation Domination. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mader, and it's injury inquiry time because it is a Thursday night that we record, so you can have this first thing Friday morning to get ready for the rest of the weekend because it is the first round of the playoffs, and this is why we do what we do to win these championships. That's why we're here. Hopefully, we'll be able to help you out along the way. Make sure you download Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. To help me with all of this, we have Dr. Brian Scott of Injured List Podcast in the building. How we doing, Doc?
We're doing exceptionally well now that I have my coquito.
All right.
And I just noticed there's a crack in this plastic cup I'm using to serve myself. So I better start drinking this fast because I don't know how long this crack's going to hold up.
All of a sudden, we're just going to see sparks fly from your keyboard.
So this is courtesy of one of my patients, and it's so freaking good.
I got a real drinking theme on this show because we have the DFS cocktail hour, on our regular show. I got the doctor who's feeling good.
That is so good.
You're feeling good, but I'm feeling sad because this is the last episode I'm going to have you for.
This season anyway, Dan. Just this season.
Just this season. But yes. So, just a heads up. The doc is going on Christmas vacation, leaving the rest of us behind. So we will have Ben McCown from the Fantasy Football Advice Network on the last 2 weeks. Don't worry. I'm still going to make sure I get a medical expert. We're not going to leave you hanging going into the championships. But the last we will hear of Dr. Brian Scott for this season, and it's been wonderful, as it always is, and I always appreciate your time coming on the show.
Pleasure. It's been busy. It's certainly been busy.
It's been a busy year, and it's no rest for the weary going into week 15. My goodness. All right, so let's kick this thing off from the top, and I get to kick it off with the whole Colts situation.
Oh man, what a mess!
What beautiful. All right, so let's start on your side of things. So we have Daniel Jones with Achilles. We have Anthony Richardson. I put him back in here because when the Daniel Jones injury happened and then they signed Phillip Rivers, it seemed like people forgot about what was going on with Anthony Richardson. So I had to add him back in to figure, just let you recap that.
It's so crazy because I don't think anybody really knows exactly what's going on with him. All we know is that he's still not around and still not available. And it's been I feel like it's been forever. What was it, week 3 or something that he got hurt?
It's been the whole year. Yeah,
It's crazy. He had an orbital bone fracture, which is basically the socket around your eye.
Right.
From a whiplash type injury from an exercise band, which in and of itself is crazy enough. What's crazier now is no one knows what's going on with him. If he's even ready to come back. The Colts haven't really said much, just that he's not available still and he needs to be cleared. But what is he doing? What is going on? And this is not something where he can't physically get himself prepared. It's his face. He can throw. He can do most activities. He can't run, and he can't. I shouldn't say that. He can't be involved in full contact, but he should be able to do just about everything else. So he should be once he's cleared, he should be ready to step back on the field, in my opinion, and get ready to go. I mean. There really should be no excuses as to him not being available, except for maybe he's not healing properly. I don't know. Nobody seems to know. So,
unless he cracked his face in two, like Harvey Two-Face and Batman.
That would be near impossible. The fact that he even sustained this injury from an exercise band is almost unheard of. I've never heard of anything like that in my 24 years working in sports medicine. And then I don't think he had surgery, which would be shocking if he did, because that takes a tremendous amount of force. You have to get hit just the right spot to cause those injuries. There are some injuries of that nature that can be very severe that require plates to hold your facial bones together. But, he didn't have that. So again, I'm not exactly sure what's going on. Maybe, this is one of those situations where we've had with a few other teams where they're looking for any excuse to just keep him off the field rather than get him back. Kind of what's his name down there in
Kyler.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kyler Murray. Yeah.
Kyler Murray, that's one case, right? And then the guy from Michigan, the young guy there with the
Oh, well, JJ, they had no choice but to turn
JJ
back to
McDaniel,
him.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. But a high ankle sprain came out of nowhere with him, all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. And then you factor in that now they lost Daniel. I'm going to segue this into Daniel Jones going down with his Achilles, which is very unfortunate. But hey, listen, that's like his third major season-ending injury. He had the ACL. He also had the neck injury that saw him miss the remainder of that season. He's been pretty banged up throughout his career, so now you have to wonder about his durability, especially as he's getting older. He's well into his career now. This looked like it might have been shaping up to be his best season as a professional, and boom, all of a sudden this happens. He's going into a free agency year. Colts say they want him back, but you got to look at his injury history now and see if that's going to hamper his contract negotiations and potentially change where he ends up.
Oh, it absolutely will. Yeah. Absolutely will.
And then Riley Leonard popped up on the injury list as well with some knee soreness. So the only remaining quarterback you have, and he's also got an injury designation. And then they pull out Phillip Rivers from wherever he was hiding at the age of 44 and signed him to the practice squad. And he was actually like taking reps and stuff today. So man, what this could be like one of the most epic falls from the top of the standings in recent NFL history for an organization here. This is crazy the way this is unfolding.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if this is a bigger implosion or if the Eagles from 2 years ago was a bigger implosion, because they were 10-0 and they made the playoffs because they were already 10-0, but that was a team that won one game after that. They just completely imploded on themselves. Now that was locker room disarray and everything else. That was a total malfunction of the organization. This is just horrible luck for the Colts.
And things were already kind of sliding a little bit.
Yeah.
They lost a few games in a row.
They were already sliding because Daniel Jones was banged up and not performing as well. I mean, that was.
So, by the way, there was a lot of speculation that this Achilles injury occurred because of the fact that he was playing with a fibular injury on the other side. The two have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
We've seen a lot of Achilles injuries. I don't know what's going on in the league with that. That's something I'm sure somebody's looking into. I think it's multifactorial. There's not any one reason why this is happening. And we don't know, and we probably won't know for a while what is causing it, but there's been a lot of Achilles ruptures in the NFL the last 2-3 years. It's been kind of weird.
Well, I mean, you get bigger, stronger, faster, but your ligaments don't necessarily grow with you or stretch out properly. I think that's exactly what the correlation is in my mind.
Well, that's one thing. And then the other thing is you look at the age of some of these guys who are having these injuries, and they're all kind of within the same age range, take away like Aaron Rodgers, of course, some of those guys, but the other thing, these guys basically do nothing but play football year round as youngsters. They come in to the professional ranks, having played a tremendous amount of football, having been in the weight room having done very specific types of. So it's got to come back to something what they're doing with their training, their off-season conditioning. It always usually comes back to some type of activity that they are or are not doing to prepare themselves to be on the field. So they're either overdoing it or they're not doing the right stuff. And that's what's leading to these injuries. It's going to be hard to kind of figure out what it is, but I'm sure people are looking into it.
Rest is important when you're doing physical activity and you're training. Rest is important. All right, so let's get into the fantasy of it all, if I can. So first thing I want to say right off the rip, if anybody can sit there and tell you that they know exactly who benefits and who doesn't from Phillip Rivers being the starting quarterback, and that's what it's looking like right now, they're lying to you. No one's got any clue. We have no idea what this guy's going to look like. For those of you who are asking, well, if Riley Leonard is in fact healthy, are we sure it's Phillip Rivers? To that, I would say yes, we are sure. Why are we sure it's Phillip Rivers? Well, besides the fact that he was taking first team reps in practice today when they were both practicing out there, there's not a shot in hell that Phillip Rivers comes off the couch 1 year away from Hall of Fame eligibility to then be the backup quarterback to Riley Leonard. There's no way that's the case. So the only way he's back is if he was told by Shane Steichen, you come back, you get to start. That's how this is going to work. And hopefully you're able to do enough to get us to the postseason, to be able to hold on. That's all the Colts are trying to do right now. That's the only reason why they make this move in the first place. This is going to be a disaster. He hasn't played since 2020. All right. And we could talk about how he's 20 to 30 pounds heavier. No, like I want to say about no kidding. He's 23. He's been a grandpa on the couch. Sure, he trains with these guys in the offseason and works out with some of the youngsters. He's not doing anything serious, getting football shape. Are you kidding me right now? So, yes, of course he's 20 to 30 pounds heavier than what he was. And then you guys are going to sit there and tell me, like, well, he can still sling it. He can still get it. I'm sorry. I don't remember when Philip Rivers ever had a strong arm, even when he was in his prime. And the whole reason he had to retire when he did is because he was cooked and it was obvious. You're going to tell me his arm got stronger in the last 4 years? I don't think so. Here's what I think could happen. And again, I'm upfront with you. This is just me theorizing and spitballing of what some probabilities could potentially realistically be. Tyler Warren and Michael Pittman, because those two are big targets with long wingspans that operate close to the line of scrimmage, that don't go down the field very often, I think those two can be okay with Philip Rivers. And of course, it's going to be a healthy dose of Jonathan Taylor. Alec Pierce is screwed. Josh Downs is screwed. And the whole offense might be screwed because this is a downgrade for everybody. Jonathan Taylor's already not the same elite running back he had been earlier on the season because Daniel Jones was playing banged up. Well, this is worse than a banged up Daniel Jones. So this is a downgrade for everybody at the end of the day. Maybe you could survive on Tyler Warren, who I do have as a low-end tight end one. Maybe you can survive on Michael Pittman if you don't have another option. You have to keep playing Jonathan Taylor, but this is an ugly situation. And I don't know what we're going to see. Like, I don't know how bad it can be. Like, people are saying it's definitely better than Brett Rippon. Is it? It might be that bad. I don't know. Like, it could be. Or maybe Philip Rivers comes out there and, has a game of a lifetime. I doubt it. But, this is a total wild card going into this Sunday. It's absolutely insane. Not something I thought we would see here. Did you see Steve Young rip him, by the way? I thought that was fascinating to watch Steve Young rip Philip Rivers because he was like, are you out of your mind?
By the way, you want to talk about somebody ripe for an Achilles rupture? Look no further.
Really.
No further than Philip Rivers. I hate to say it. I hope it doesn't happen, but I mean, that's like the perfect recipe right there. Pull a guy who's 44 years old who hasn't been doing anything, throw him on the NFL field and ask him to drop back and make passes under pressure. Good luck. It
is wolf. So yeah, so Michael Pittman's a wide receiver 3, Tyler Warren's a back end tight end 1, and outside of Jonathan Taylor, I don't really want to touch this team. All right, so let's move to Jaden Daniels, who re-injured his elbow this past Sunday.
Yeah, well, they're sorry, I don't know what that was really loud. They're saying he's just got some elbow soreness. It sounded like he probably landed on it. That's gonna be the case for the rest of the season. Now he by all reports he didn't re-dislocate it. And I didn't see the play. I assumed he was wearing a brace. If he wasn't, he should have been. They've already ruled him out for this weekend. They're going to play it safe. I mean, they've got nothing to play for anyway. No sense in risking it.
So don't bring him back the rest of the season.
Why?
Like that, and they keep not wanting to go to that point. I'm like, Mariota has actually been playing quite well. Like, they almost beat Denver a couple of weeks ago in overtime. Like, he's playing quite well. I don't know why if your whole thing is that you want to try to be competitive to close out the season, I get that. Coaches want to do that. Players want to do that. You're doing that with Marcus Mariota. Why are you putting the franchise quarterback on the line like that? Makes no sense to me. By the way, fantasy-wise, Mariota has been the quarterback 8 overall in Daniels' absence. And now you got the Giants, who are giving up the 3rd most fantasy points to the quarterback position. Guess what? Marcus Mariota is inside my top 12, and you should be playing him everywhere that you can in DFS, but you can also start him this week in a streaming situation if you find yourself in that situation. This situation is almost as bad as the Colts. Not quite to the extreme, but it's pretty close.
Only because the Jets suck.
So Justin Fields, who's been hurt with a knee injury, but really they wanted to bench him too anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Tyrod Taylor then picks up a groin. So now we're down to Brady Cook.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there, I'm just like, oh, I should have known better. Because I was hopeful. I have Breece Hall. I'm in the playoffs with some of those leagues. I have Breece Hall in. It's like, with Tyrod Taylor, it's like I actually have a higher floor to ceiling ratio. This is a beautiful thing. But I should have known part of the Tyrod Taylor experience is that he's going to get hurt. It's just going to happen. Oh, God. All right, Brian.
Every time, we talk about this a lot. Every time he gets a shot to be a starter in this league, something bad happens. And now he's dealing with a groin injury. I don't think he's practiced at all this week. Neither has Justin Fields, who, by the way, they still have never really said what's going on with him. They just said he had some knee soreness. that was really just a way to get him off the field after going 2-7. And then, you got your rookie, I forget his name. Brooks, is it?
Brady Cook.
Brady Cook, whatever. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, tomato, tomato.
So here's another Kyler Murray, JJ McCarthy situation. You're trying to get the guy that's supposed to be your starter off the field so you can see what you got on the bench. And as we know with Tyrod Taylor, it's just a matter of time.
We don't need to see this. We don't need to see this. So yeah. I'm going to guess there's something actually is wrong with Justin Fields, because I mean, honestly don't think that they would turn to Brady Cook. I don't think they want to see what they got in Brady Cook. I don't think that's the thing.
Well, then I don't know what's going on with Justin Fields, because they really haven't been very open about it. They haven't said much about it. He's just been kind of MIA. And you would think that by now he's had a few weeks where he's been down with the bye week, and then with
could also be, and this is me spitballing. I'm not reporting anything here, but it could also be during that time when they were talking about benching him and then couldn't, because Tyrod got hurt in practice and they couldn't play him anyway. That he was talking about how he was going through some stuff off the field and that this was kind of draining on him mentally. I do wonder if maybe there's an element of that going on as well.
Certainly possible.
To your point, they have not been very open or clear about what this injury actually is, which makes you wonder if it's really the injury or not. So, I mean, that's just spitballing here, but it's a weird situation. Do you think we're going to see Tyrod this Sunday?
As of right now, it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picking up too, because he hasn't practiced yet.
He hasn't practiced this week. Yeah.
Brady Cook. So when he took over, he went 14 of 30 for 163 yards and 2 interceptions. And no one did anything for fantasy football purposes. Not Donnie Mitchell, not John Mechie, not Mason Taylor, not Breece Hall. Nobody. So yeah, Breece Hall's still in my top 24 of running backs. Like, he's too talented of a player in a work share that you kind of have to play him. But against Jacksonville, who's a hot defense right now, has been good against the run all season long, I would say, depending upon your options, he might not be a must start. So here's a debate that's going on around the fantasy industry right now. Should you start Breece Hall or should you start Woody Marks? And I get it. Woody Marks is downright just mentally draining because he's getting the workload that your model will just pop off about. Especially now, and we're going to get to Woody Marks and Nick Chubb in a minute. But if Nick Chubb doesn't play on Sunday, with the workload that he gets, with no Nick Chubb in there, and the matchup that he has, you're like, I have to play this. You have to be a top 20 running back. But then you remember it's Woody Marks, and he's not very good. He doesn't make guys miss. He's not really efficient in any of his runs. He's shockingly not as involved in the passing game as he should be, which was his MO coming out of college. But we're not getting that. And then you have Breece Hall, who would be a superstar if he was anywhere but the Jets. And now we're back to, but you have Brady Cook, a team that doesn't score. We've seen Breece Hall have low floors all throughout the year because of that situation when they have to play tough defenses. I have Woody Marks ranked a little bit ahead of Breece Hall. It's too important of a week to sit there and watch Breece Hall put up 40 yards and no catches with no scores against Jacksonville. It's too important of a week. What a nightmare. Oh, I don't want to touch any of the Jets wide receivers, by the way. Speaking of running backs, why don't we just hop right into Woody Marks and Nick Chubb since I brought them up? So what do you got going on there?
So Woody Marks returned to practice today, limited. Now, some reports said ankle, some reports were saying ankle knee. I've seen a few reports saying knee. That, again, doesn't sound like it's anything serious. Limited practice today. Probably will ramp it up tomorrow and anticipate, but he should be available.
That's good news. That's the good news. So he should be good to go. He practiced in limited capacity today. Yeah, so that's good. What about Nick Chubb, though? Because this is the big part.
He has not practiced. He missed the second day of practice. They're saying he's dealing with some rib injuries. They haven't said specifically if it's fractured ribs or just sprained ribs or bruised ribs. Either way, that's a very painful injury to deal with. At the running back position, you're going to have to tuck the ball, hold on to that ball, and you're going to take hits and land on the ball. That's probably how he got hurt in the first place. So until he's feeling better, I don't anticipate him being available. And he, not that he necessarily has to get a full practice in, but I would have expected him to at least be out there in a limited capacity in anticipation of him playing. Now, we still have Friday. Today's Thursday. He could still get out there. Doesn't necessarily need a lot of conditioning or practice to get ready for the game this weekend. However, if he's still at all sore or still favoring those ribs, if he does end up playing, it's probably going to be on a very limited snap count. And I think Woody Marks will probably get the bulk of the share.
Yeah, so it just felt like vibes the whole week that it just didn't seem like Nick Chubb was really going to suit up this week. Like they're not necessarily coming out and saying it, but the vibes around it the whole time have been like, I don't think we're going to see Nick Chubb for this week. And everyone's kind of anticipating that. So like I said, Woody Marks in my top 20. You got to play him with the matchup and the volume that he's going to get. Speaking of ribs and speaking of running backs, what's going on with Devon Achane?
So he's kind of in a similar situation, although he did have an MRI and it did not show any fractures. And they said that, he looked pretty good the last few days. I think he might have been limited today. I'm not exactly sure.
He was.
Yeah, so I anticipate that he'll probably be back this week. He's going to be a little sore, but I think that they'll have him available.
That's good. Then that's good news. Now, I do want to make a note of this fantasy-wise, though, in case we don't have Devon Achane, or in case if you wanted to pick up his quote-unquote handcuff. Because most of the year, we've been operating under this idea that Ollie Gordon is the handcuff. We found out on Sunday that's apparently not the case. So I don't know when this switch happened because all year long, Ollie Gordon's been operating as the number 2. But when Devon Achane went out with his rib injury, with a pretty significant portion of that game still left, and then didn't come back in, it was Jalen Wright, not Ollie Gordon, who wasn't just a lead back, was basically the bell cow in comparison. He had 62% of the team carries and 10% target share to Gordon's 13% carries, and Gordon had 0 targets. It was all Jalen Wright, and he was effective. He went over 100 yards. He had a touchdown. So if you're looking for the handcuff, and if for some reason he's still available, Jalen Wright's the guy you want to own, not Ollie Gordon, apparently going into the situation, because this was new information for everybody involved. Josh Jacobs is back on the injury report with a knee issue again, and this feels eerily similar to how he missed that week I guess it was a month or two ago at this point.
Yeah, but what's weird about it is apparently they did do an MRI already, and they said that there's nothing structurally wrong with his knee. So you have to wonder what that swelling is coming from. And it appears that it keeps reappearing, which is concerning. Right. So now MRIs are not 100% accurate. There is some, inaccuracy in them. Usually they're about 80 to 85% when it comes to accurately being able to diagnose certain conditions and problems inside the knee. So there is a chance that he's probably dealing with some type of meniscal tear or meniscal injury, and it's just not significant enough that they can see it on the MRI. That's typically what we see in these scenarios where you have soft tissue swelling or knee fluid buildup inside the knee. Now, if it's soft tissue swelling outside the knee that's causing this to be the problem, then that's usually more like a soft tissue injury, like a tendonitis or something like that. And if that's the case, that's more of kind of like an overuse chronic issue that pops up from time to time. That would be the best case scenario, even though none of it's really great to have. But because the fact that it's swelling, it means that it's irritated and it's probably causing him some level of discomfort and maybe affecting his play. Now, again, this is a situation at this point in the season where you can rest. You don't necessarily have to be out there getting ready every day of practice to be able to go. It sounds like they're just kind of managing him on a day-to-day basis. He seems pretty encouraged that he'll be able to play through it. They were interviewing him, and he basically is like, it's just some swelling. It's not a big deal. I'll get through it. I've dealt with it before. So it's certainly something to keep an eye on.
I did think it was interesting during that interview, though, that he would stop short of saying that he was going to play this Sunday, which is interesting for a player.
Correct. And I think it's because of the fact that he's dealt with it before, and it has cost him some time. But at least he felt, he seemed positive in his response because of the fact that the MRI was clean. So just again, I think this is going to be more of a day-to-day thing. Could be a true game time decision. He'll probably carry a questionable tag. Will it affect his play on the field? Most likely not. Will it affect the team's decision about whether he plays? Most definitely.
Yeah, I think that's what it boils down to. So the good news is that this is not a long-term injury. The bad news is that it still could wind up costing him this Sunday because he has not practiced yet to this point, and they may do with him what they did a few weeks ago and give him a day off. It's a big game against the Denver Broncos. I get it. And the Packers are in the middle of a heated playoff race where they're trying to make sure they hold on to the division. So there's a lot of things at stake here, but it's not quite the playoffs. And they might view that as a team who looks like playoff bound as more important to make sure their star running back is good to go. So this is something we're going to have to watch real closely, and we may have to watch real closely all the way up into Sunday. Here's what's going on the back end. Emmanuel Wilson when Jacobs couldn't go before, had 28 carries for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was not the most efficient performance, but he had enough volume to get the job done. What they showed you is that he will get a bell cow level workload if Josh Jacobs is not available. Chris Brooks will not rotate in enough. Don't love the matchup against Denver in Denver, but I will say this, the game script will be pro run balance like the Packers like to be, because not one of these offenses I think are going to pull away with two really good defenses like they are, and two offenses that are very inconsistent throughout the season. So it will provide at least a base floor if you pick up Emmanuel Wilson if Jacobs cannot go, and you just got to hope that he does fall into the end zone. I think I mentioned Breece Hall, but he was dealing with a knee issue. What do you got on him?
So they're just saying he's got some knee soreness, and that's not unusual, especially since, a couple of years ago, he had that ACL reconstruction, struggled a little bit in his comeback, had some setbacks when he did finally return. So that's probably what he's dealing with, and that can happen from time to time. That's probably going to be something he's going to have to deal with the rest of his career, but it didn't sound like it was anything serious. They're probably just giving him ample time to rest and recover in time for this weekend's game, which we should see him in.
Yeah, he did practice in a limited capacity here on Thursday, so it's a pretty good sign he'll be able to suit up. If he couldn't go, it'd be Isaiah Davis. I would maybe, if you have the roster space and Isaiah Davis is available, I would maybe pick him up regardless, because whenever you hear Breece Hall and knee issue, I get a little bit concerned. And then we're also at the part of the year with this particular team where if Breece Hall decides, wink, wink, I want to shut it down, that's potentially, I don't think it's going to happen this Sunday because he is practicing on limited capacity. But if it were to, let's say, get re-aggravated this upcoming Sunday, I could easily see him doing that. Because remember, they didn't pick up his option. So Breece Hall very much could be a free agent at the end of the season. He's played well enough on a bad team that I think a lot of good teams would be willing to offer him a deal. So there's some business decisions that could pop up if Breece Hall were to aggravate this again on Sunday. So if you're looking like you're championship bound, maybe pick up Isaiah Davis just in case. Although if it's Brady Cook, maybe don't bother. I don't know. Alvin Kamara, anything new on him?
No, he still hasn't practiced this week, so we're heading into week 3 now, recovering from this MCL injury. And if you watched initially, we had stated it's probably going to be anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, and so we're kind of right on track for that, I think. I think it's going to be probably next week that we actually see him step back on the practice field and start amping it up. If not, then that could potentially pose more question marks and possibly season-ending injury. However, it doesn't kind of fit with Alvin Kamara's history. So I think they're just going to give him another week to rest and start doing him some practice sessions and rehab and limited stuff next week. So we'll see.
This is what I think is going to happen. I think Alvin Kamara is going to play again this season, but I think it's going to be week 18 because I think it's just going to be his last game as New Orleans Saint. He's going to play one more game as New Orleans Saint because he's very loyal to the team. That much has been made very clear, especially heading into the trade deadline. But I don't think there's any real reason to play Kamara multiple games this season. Whatever juice he has left, he's going to try to save it for a contender team next year. Because I don't think he's going to retire yet, but there's not much there left. There's no reason for him to stay on the Saints. I think he plays one more game, and it's outside your fantasy football playoffs. So what does that mean? Devin Neal. I talked about Devin Neal on the show yesterday. Make sure you go back, download, watch on at FF Advice Net for the Operation Domination. And so he's getting 62% of the team carries. He's getting 8% of the target share. He's running 71% of the routes. You take the name out of it, put that to any running back, you're like, oh yeah, I got a locked and loaded bare minimum RB2. If he's got any efficiency, that could even be an RB1. He's got no efficiency on an offense that stinks. So he winds up being an RB3. That's kind of the issue here. So he is a flex play consideration. He did score last weekend, so he gave you a little bit of something. This is a decent matchup here against the Carolina Panthers for running back, especially ones that are involved in the passing game, which Devin Neal is. So he does come in my top 30, but he does not crack my top 24. So play that as you will, just because there's not enough to be excited about with the Saints. Just woof. Chris Rodriguez popped up with a groin issue. You have an update there.
Yeah, he didn't practice on Wednesday, but he did get in a limited session on Thursday. I do expect that we should see him try and do more on Friday to test that thing out before the weekend's game. At the running back position, the groin can severely hamper your ability to cut and get through the hole. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. could be a game time decision. He probably will carry a questionable tag if he does not get a full session in tomorrow, Friday.
And Chris Rodriguez is a hard enough cutting time as it is because he's a big back who just needs to go north and south. So that's something to watch out for. And it's funny because he was moving up my ranks this week because, well, he's got a matchup against the Giants. Right. And Rodriguez established himself at the very bare minimum as the goal line back of the Commanders. And like I say, with Marcus Mariota, this is an offense that can move the ball. They got Terry McLaurin back, Deebo Samuel's out there. Mariota, like they can move the ball there, especially against the Giants defense. So it was a little bit interesting with Chris Rodriguez right now hanging out as my RB32 until we get some injury news on him. He may move up a little bit from there. But if he can't go and we're back to JCM, I guess JCM will hang around my top 36, but I got to tell you, I don't feel good about it because he's had ample opportunity and ample positive matchups and has not been able to take advantage, which is the whole reason why he's now lost a job to Chris Rodriguez in the first place. So I'm not going down in my fantasy football playoffs with JCM. I may take a shot on Chris Rodriguez, hoping he gets into the end zone in a plus matchup. So we'll watch what happens there. Dylan Sampson. I know no one's playing Dylan Sampson, but I wanted to bring him up. So what's going on with this calf/hand thing going on?
Not sure exactly what's going on with the hand, but it sounds like it was just a little irritation to the calf. He didn't practice his second straight day, however. And keep in mind, though, he was one of 10 Cleveland Brown players that did not practice on Thursday. And they're about to go play in Chicago. I think that's going to be really cold and probably not the greatest conditions to play in coming off an injury. And so 10 guys are going to be really struggling this weekend. He's one of them.
Yeah, I feel like they just might be boycotting.
Maybe.
No, the only reason that team has to keep going is for Myles Garrett to break the sacks record. That's what they have going for them, right? So all those defensive guys, especially the guys along the line that, to your point, didn't like Shelby Harris and Mason Graham, if they can go at all, they will, because they will help out Myles Garrett as much as they can. That much. Everybody else in that team, I have no idea how motivated they are. But the real reason I wanted to bring up Dylan Sampson, like I said, no one's playing Dylan Sampson, but Jerome Ford's already on the IR. So if Dylan Sampson's out and Jerome Ford's on the IR, we might see Quinshon Judkins on a whole other level of a bell cow workload heading against the Chicago Bears this upcoming weekend. Because the one thing Judkins has not been able to get involved in is the passing game. And he wasn't a big pass catcher there in college. That's partly the reason why. But if there's no Sampson and there's no Jerome Ford, I guarantee you it doesn't matter who they're bringing up off the practice squad, who they're bringing in as backups. They will give Judkins some of those opportunities come Sunday. So he might be in for a 30 opportunity type of game if none of those guys can go. So that's why.
Music to my ears. I've got him on my team. I need him to do well.
There you go. He definitely should have the volume, if nothing else. This is a similar reason why I wanted to bring up this running back. So Keaton Mitchell dealing with a knee issue. What do you got there?
It doesn't sound like it's anything serious. He did leave the game with this knee injury, but the team was optimistic right from the get-go. They said he's probably going to be day-to-day. He did get a full session in today, and it sounds like he should be good to go this weekend. So good news there.
That is good news there. All right, so Keaton Mitchell will be good to go. He'll be there to be the backup for Derrick Henry, who they don't use enough anyway with a banged up Lamar Jackson, and yet you still got to play him, and round we go. CeeDee Lamb.
Dan, before we jump into the wide receivers, Trey Benson officially out. He's not coming back. This was the last week that they had to activate him off his 21-day practice window, and as the days passed by, it started getting less and less likely that he was coming back, and lo and behold, I think they actually announced today that he's done. Now you have to wonder if, yesterday, I saw it today. Now you have to wonder, though, what's going to happen in the offseason. Is this some type of surgical issue? Is he going to have some type of offseason procedure, maybe? We're not quite sure, but something to keep an eye on heading into the offseason here.
A lot of questions, especially from the dynasty perspective, because remember, they lost James Conner. Now, James Conner at his age, I don't know how much they're going to want to bring him back, but at the same time, Trey Benson did not get the opportunity to establish himself. So if I'm a dynasty owner of Trey Benson, I'm a little nervous right now because I don't know if you're going to get your value back, because they could very well address the position next year with a whole new, talent group with a guy with a higher draft capital, because Trey Benson was never able to prove that he could take the job. So not looking good if you have dynasty shares of Trey Benson with this news more so than anything else. With him out, then, we know we're stuck with Zonovan Knight and Michael Carter, and that's not exciting. Not exciting at all. They played the Bengals in championship week. So hold on to your seats. But yeah, I'm still not excited for it either. All right, let's get into the wide receivers. So CeeDee Lamb, they did play last Thursday, but he was dealing with a concussion issue. So what do you got here?
Yeah, I thought for sure he was going to be out this week. I mean, that was a pretty nasty looking hit he
It
took.
was.
He ended up with that kind of posturing position, we call it, where his arms were kind of stiff and stuff. So he definitely had a traumatic brain injury, a la concussion. And then today he got in a full practice session. So very quick turnaround, very surprising turnaround. Now he's not officially cleared yet, but I mean, that's about as close as you can get. Now, if he goes symptom-free the next 24 hours, if he's able to do as much, if not more, on practice on Friday, then he just needs to be cleared by independent neurological consultant, and if that can happen any point over the weekend heading into the game. So optimism there for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I know he played last Thursday, so I knew he did have the couple extra days. But I really did not think he was going to come back in a week after that nasty hit. It was pretty nasty. I did have a note here that if he does miss, George Pickens has consistently been a top 5 wide receiver, even top 3 with those CeeDee Lamb around. But he's still a wide receiver 1, even with CeeDee Lamb in the building. And if he's good, the Lamb that is, then you have to play him. Devontae Adams. So this was a late ad for me because he's now gone 2 days in a row with a hamstring injury, not practicing. So I think we need to talk about this one.
Well, he was seen doing some light work on the side today. So even though he officially didn't practice, he was out there doing stuff, and that's a good sign. There's been no indication by the team or their head coach that he's in danger of missing this weekend, and I have to believe them when they say that. You know, he's a veteran. He's not going to push through this type of issue if he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, and he doesn't need much time to get prepared. My guess is that it was more like maybe some soreness or some tightness in that hamstring that crept up on him after the weekend. So it doesn't sound like it's severe. I think we'll see him. I hope we'll see him. I need him. And I'm praying for you, Devontae.
The good news about Devontae Adams is, like you said, he could just practice limited capacity on a Friday and still suit up on Sunday and be good to go. That's the good news on Devontae Adams. We actually saw him earlier this season have something similar going on. Now, he didn't miss 2 days of practice, but he did miss a day of practice. He popped up with a hamstring issue. He wound up being good to go. The other positive about Devontae Adams is the way he's been utilized. They're not asking him to run down the field very far. They're saying, hey, when we get in the red zone, we're going to target you more than any other wide receiver in the entire league, which is why you lead the league in touchdowns. And that's how you're going to create your fantasy points. Like, Devontae Adams is a wide receiver 1 because he's just scoring touchdowns left and right on the number 1 offense in the NFL. So just keep that rolling this week too. And there you go. I mean, he's still my wide receiver 8, even with this concern, unless he winds up getting ruled out. T. Higgins concussion issue.
Yeah, so what's concerning here is that he actually had a concussion the week prior. And, maybe week 13, came back to play, and then sustained what sounds like another concussion toward the end of the game, week 14, and popped up in concussion protocol on Monday. Nobody can really pinpoint exactly where the concussion happened. Some people are saying he probably hit his head on the turf coming down, trying to make a catch late in the game. What's concerning here, though, is you have to wonder if he was ever fully recovered from that first concussion. Because what you can sometimes happen is you can have these subconcussive symptoms that pop up later on if you're not fully healed from the first concussion that occurred. And there's a serious condition known as second impact syndrome, which can be potentially life-threatening. And that's what you don't want to happen. And that usually happens when people have not adequately recovered from one concussion. They get another head trauma, and it basically causes your brain to shut down and swell, and that's a medical emergency. So that's the last thing you want, and that's why they take concussions very seriously. So now that he's in concussion protocol, I find it hard to believe that they're going to let him step back on the field this week. He was, quote unquote, very limited in practice today, and I think that that's going to be as much as we see him do heading into the weekend here. So unfortunately, I don't think he's going to get cleared this week. Now, he'll probably ramp up his activity, but in the essence of safety and when it comes to concussions, the way they're being treated nowadays, I just don't see it happening. It'd be a big risk on the Bengals' part to throw him back out there, given the fact that he's now 2 weeks in a row and played through almost the entire game and then went on concussion protocol afterwards. So not something they're going to want to mess around with.
Yeah, I was more shocked that he was even able to do enough to be a limited capacity at practice at all.
Yeah, and well, they said very limited, which tells me he probably didn't do much at all. He probably was just on the sideline doing some catches or like light stuff.
That's fine, but there's also did not practice. There's also DMPs, which is more what I was expecting to see. Because I'm with you. There's no way with the concussions so close together that he's going to suit up this Sunday. I don't see how it's possible. Jamar Chase locks in as a top 5 guy. And this is just an organization that's really in the dumps right now. I mean, it felt like for a second they had some juice and they had Buffalo on the ropes and they were like kind of trending in the right direction. And then after that game, it sounds like Joe Burrow's not in a very good place right now with his press conference that he got the comments that came out of him and everything like that. But he's still playing football. He's still Joe Burrow and he still knows how to get the ball to Jamar Chase. And well, that's what you need this weekend. As far as the T. Higgins of it all goes, this is the T. Higgins experience. I'm not saying like the concussions necessarily, but we had 6 games or 4 games, whatever it was, that T. Higgins missed earlier this season, and then he misses a couple here and there. Like if you draft T. Higgins, this is why I don't understand why people continue to draft him where they do in fantasy football leagues, because I've made this comparison now the last 2 years. He is Mike Williams. Yes, his talent is very tantalizing. Yes, he can go off with the best of them, but you're going to be dealing with multiple injuries, and he's going to miss multiple games throughout a year. That's what he is. That's who he is. That's who he's been now for 6 seasons. So you kind of have to deal with this fact, and it's rotten timing. But that it is what it is. So Mike Gesicki, Andre Josevich, they will probably get a little bit uptick in target share and playing time, but ultimately, I don't really want to have to play either one of those guys. Jamar Chase gets the ultimate boost. Chase Brown will likely be more involved in the passing game on checkdowns as well, so you kind of get a boost to him too, and that's what we're looking at for fantasy football purposes for that situation. This was a weird thing that popped up. So DK Metcalf apparently has some sort of stomach issue that he had to get hospitalized for.
Yeah, he developed, I guess, some stomach pain at some point, either during or after the game, and was admitted to the hospital overnight for observation in Baltimore, mostly as a precaution and probably to rule out any type of internal organ damage or, internal bleeding. This is very reminiscent or potentially could have been reminiscent of Chris Sims back in the early 2000s, who was injured while playing against the Panthers and had some abdominal pain, played through it, later on ended up in the hospital with a ruptured spleen, lost like 9 liters of blood, had to have emergency surgery and his spleen removed, made a full recovery, but we've never quite the same after that. And so that's a very serious problem and condition. You don't want that to happen. But it sounds like everything was worked up, everything came back negative, and it was more of a precautionary move than anything. You can't blame him for that. You don't want to mess around with the internal organs of the abdomen. So it, as far as I know, he's back to normal. I don't know what he did at practice this week, but I don't see it being a long-term issue.
Well, that was the surprising thing is he practiced in full today on Thursday.
So it could have been maybe just some abdominal cramping or maybe a stomach virus thing. Hard to say for sure. Maybe he got hit and got contused somewhere, but the workup was negative, and so that's good news.
Boy, is he a frustrating fantasy football player. So everybody's sitting there like, oh, we saw the DK of old. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean it's coming back. So last week, he had a 38% target share, and he had an 87% team air yard share. That number is friggin' insane. You want to talk about one guy getting the football and one guy only? That's what that tells you. 87% team air yard share. There was nobody else in the field, basically, for Aaron Rodgers. While it makes sense, and while we thought there was a potential that kind of a role could have been in place for DK Metcalf this entire season, this has not been the case. This is the first week that has really been that level. He's only had 3 games this entire year. He's finished in the top 10. Otherwise, going into week 14, this is the wide receiver 33 on the year. So I'm not counting, even in a decent matchup here, I'm not counting on the idea of DK Metcalf continuing this kind of usage, because this seems more like an aberration than the norm. Maybe we could suddenly get proven wrong here by Arthur Smith. I guess that's possible, but that has not been the pattern to this point. Therefore, I'm not counting on it. Therefore, DK Metcalf is still sitting outside my top 24 heading into this week. Okay, Rome Odunze, what's going on with his foot?
Well, initially, reports were saying that he had a potential stress fracture, which told me that he's probably going to be out multiple weeks. Now, you fast forward, And today he was a limited participant in practice for the second straight day. I don't necessarily know if that means we're going to see him back, but that's a step in the right direction for sure. So I guess the question is it truly a stress fracture? Because if it is, I don't think he's ready. And they'd be risking a complete fracture if they brought him back too soon. So let's see what he does on Friday. He'll probably carry a questionable tag. Maybe he's going to be a game time decision. Maybe they take away any designation on Friday if he can get in a full session and feel good. I don't know. But initial reports were saying stress fracture. And if that was the case, that should require multiple weeks.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you're a stress fracture. Like, I'm not expecting you to be on the practice field. So this was another one that kind of surprised me. The fact that he even was. To your point, it doesn't mean we're definitely going to see him this Sunday. And I made this whole thing last week, Brian, when you were on the show. And I even said then, I was like, honestly, Odunze being out might be a benefit. Because you feel compelled to play him based on what he gave you early in the season and what his role is supposed to be within this Ben Johnson coach-led offense. And you're getting left with a hell of a lot more disappointments than not over the past 6 weeks. Now you're going against the Cleveland Browns. Now, to your point, the Cleveland Browns had 10 players not play. Most of that on defense. Denzel Ward looks legitimately like he might not play on Sunday. So that does kind of lighten things up a little bit. What otherwise would be a poor matchup on paper for any wide receiver. But I'm not counting on it necessarily. And because the Bears have gone back to, you know what? The defense started playing better. We can tandem run this thing with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. And this is a game in which they could just grind out if they want to. And Ben Johnson seems all too happy to do it because it seems like the last thing he wants to do is expose Caleb Williams. It's very, very clear he does not trust Caleb Williams with making the correct reads on a consistent basis. Nor should he. But it's clear that he doesn't because he is way dialed back on his opportunities as a passer and or playmaker than what we saw in the first couple of months of the season. Way dialed back on that. I expect that to continue here. So if Odunze were to be out there, I do think I have him more in my wide receiver 3 tier conversation. Therefore, I don't think he's a must start. If he's not out there, the pecking order, I still don't want to touch anybody. Luther Burden still wide receiver 4. DJ Moore still wide receiver 4. So I laid this out in yesterday's show. I'll repeat it again in case you didn't hear it, but make sure you go back and download. Luther Burden, with no Odunze, still did not reach 70% of the routes run. He had 21% target share. He was better than DJ Moore, which I think is what a lot of people are latching onto, but he did not reach 70% of the routes run. That is not enough playing time for you to count on in any kind of capacity. And DJ Moore has just been bad. Plain and simple, just been bad. So outside of Colston Loveland, there's really no other Bears pass catcher I want to have to play, regardless of how this injury shakes out. Garrett Wilson, and I only bring him up because his name keeps getting brought up because technically he's eligible to come off of IR, even though he has not yet to this point. Do you think we see Garrett Wilson this season?
I do not. They haven't even opened up his 21-day practice window as of yet. This is an injury that goes all the way back to week 6. He missed time week 7 and 8, then re-aggravated in week 10, went on IR week 11. So this is the week that we should have seen them activated off the 21 day, and we don't. So with time running out, the Jets season a waste. I mean, I don't think we're going to see him. Now, we don't know the specifics of the injury either. Keep that in mind. They've just been saying a knee injury. They haven't really gone into too much specifics. Hopefully, this is not something that's going to require off-season surgery. Hopefully, he's not having any major setbacks. Maybe this is just more of a precautionary move, which I would agree with. But I don't think we're seeing him back this year.
I tend to agree. Marvin Harrison, heel.
I don't know what's going on with this heel. He still has not even been seen at the practice facility for the second straight day today on Thursday. And now Jonathan Gannon is supposed to give an update tomorrow, apparently, before practice, Friday. So pay attention. I think he might share some more news about whether or not we can expect to see him this weekend, but it's not looking good at this point.
So I do remember seeing a report when this injury first happened that alluded to the idea that this heel injury was somewhat concerning. Again, no actual details to tell you what it was, but there was a report out kind of right away to let you know that maybe this wasn't a typical heel injury that you would normally see. And I said it to you yesterday or last week too. I was like, remember Keenan Allen? I'm just saying, This feels a little bit like that. This feels a little bit like
the
that.
funny thing is, like, there's not a lot of like common heel things you see in football
Sure.
players, at least not like acutely. A lot of it is more maybe overuse type stuff. So maybe it's like an acute on chronic type injury where there was something that he was dealing with all season and it just got severely aggravated when he came back that week. I don't know, but it's not looking good for this week.
It's not looking good for this week. And if you have Michael Wilson, I think you're almost wish casting that he doesn't come back the rest of the season. Because my God, so Michael Wilson is averaging 15 and a half targets, 12 receptions, 148 yards, and 0.6 touchdowns per game. That's not his productivity line without Marvin Harrison the last few weeks. That is a per game basis right now. Michael Wilson without Marvin Harrison is the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy football. Purely volume based, mind you. But that's what's happening because Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball between 40 and 50 times, and the only other person besides Michael Wilson who gets thrown the football is Trey McBride. Like the guys get like a 40% target share off of tier 1 volume. Huh. So even against the Houston Texans this week, I get it. No Paris Johnson for the Cardinals. Very, very scary against Houston Texans. 100% it is. I don't disagree with any of that. But there's just too much volume where I think it negates the negativity that the matchup is. Michael Wilson, and I am projecting him this week with there being no Marvin Harrison, as if there's going to be no Marvin Harrison. He's a top 12 wide receiver. He's a must start, even against Houston, even in your fantasy playoff matchups. Must start. No one's hotter. No one's getting the ball more. You have to play him. All right, so let's go to, well, give me a quick update on Matthew Golden.
Well, it's not looking good. You know, he's been dealing with this since like week 12, missed 2 games, and then got in this past weekend, but only for 5 snaps. They threw him the ball once and he didn't make a catch. So he was limited at practice again today, Thursday. I mean, maybe he'll play this weekend, but is he going to be more effective if he can't even get into a full practice? I don't know. It's not looking good. I mean, he might be out there, but I don't know if you're going to see anything in the way of production.
Well, and with Jaden Reed back, they have their old crew. They have Dobbs, they have Watson, they have Reed, and they have Dontavian Wicks. I almost wonder if this might be a soft redshirting situation for Matthew Golden as a first-round pick who didn't live up to the hype, at least for his rookie year. Parker Washington, he's dealing with that hip issue. You got an update for me?
Some type of hip injury. They haven't said what. He was limited in practice on Thursday after missing this past weekend, and we originally thought it may have been like a hip pointer. That still could be the case, but he did get a limited session in Thursday.
So if he misses, what we're seeing is that Tim Patrick gets to play kind of like an outside role. Jacoby Myers bumps into the slot, and now they got BTJ back too. Like, this isn't effective for like Parker Washington's own self for fantasy football purposes, but it does shift and consolidate the targets around Jacoby, BTJ, and Bretton Strange, who's also been pretty effective over the past few weeks as well since he's been back from injury. And Trevor Lawrence has been playing a lot better since that's been the case. And they got a nice matchup against the Jets this week. So I would say wheels up on all Jacksonville Jaguar players. That includes BTJ. We saw some play from him last week. He is a wide receiver 3. He's not a must start by any stretch of the means, but he's in my top 36 given the matchup and given the consolidation we get to see if there is in fact no Parker Washington. All right, so we move into the tight ends, and this is just a sad one to see. So Zach Ertz dealing with the ACL, and you can talk about what kind of ACL injury it was, but also do you think this might be the career end for Zach Ertz?
Well, it certainly could be. I mean, he's 35 years old. He's been in the league for like 15 seasons already. I mean, you know, the older you are when this injury occurs, the less likely you are to bounce back from it, especially in the NFL and especially as a tight end. So that he's got all that working against him, unfortunately. Now, it looked really bad, but it could have been a lot worse. Luckily for him, he was kind of airborne when his knee got hit. His foot wasn't planted, and it was a direct contact ACL injury. It was not a non-contact injury. So it was pretty violent type of force that caused it. Now you have to wonder and concern yourself about whether or not there's any other structural damage to that knee, given the sheer forces that were involved to cause it. You know, we might not know if we see him back again, and he might not know if he's able to come back again for at least 6 to 9 months. So I wouldn't expect an answer or, you know, a decision on him or from the team about whether or not he's going to retire or come back from this. And to be honest, he shouldn't rush into a decision. He should take his time. And I think he's going to need at least a full 9 to 12 months before he knows for sure whether or not he can compete still at this level, because it's going to be a tough recovery. Even if it is a straightforward ACL tear, which according to all reports, that's what it is. I haven't heard or seen any reports that say there was other damage to the knee. Although I can tell you from experience, when you see that type of significant hyperextension type injury from a major force, traumatic force, it'd be pretty rare to not have something else happen. But we'll have to see how things kind of pan out in his recovery. He's definitely going to not be around much heading into the preseason. I mean, this is going to take a big chunk of next year out. So now you're realistically looking at possibly the 2027, 2026, 27 season or 28 season, whatever. I mean, that's a whole nother year away. I mean, you start throwing more time into to the recovery and stuff too at this age with this type. I mean, everything's kind of working against him. It would be a really tough uphill battle in recovery for him to get back to where he wants to be or feels comfortable getting back out there. But some guys, this is what they eat, sleep, and breathe. And who wants to go out with an injury? Who wants to end it with an injury? He's had a solid career. He's been a solid tight end for many years, and he's been pretty durable throughout his career. Nobody wants to go out like this. So if there's motivation to come back, that's usually it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I have a feeling we're going to see Zach Ertz at least one more time. Now, it might be a shade of Zach Ertz, because I'm more with you. I think this screams 2027, because when you start doing the math, I mean, you're talking about like maybe best case scenario midway through next year. And I don't think at 36 years old that anybody's going to really bring him in on a significant role or seriously at that point in the season. But then if you wait another year, now we're talking about him being 37, 38 years old, coming off of an ACL. It gets a little bit hairy, but I do have a feeling we might see him one more time. I hope so for his sake. Fantasy-wise, this goes into more of a dynasty conversation, but the guy's been waiting around for Ben Sinnott to get his opportunity. I think we're about to see it. So I know snap-wise and everything on paper, John Bates has been the tight end too, but that's more because he's a veteran tight end, I think, playing a very specific role. I think we're going to see Ben Sinnott be the starting tight end this week in place of Zach Ertz, and we'll get to see what he can do. And dynasty-wise, this could be very significant. Redraft-wise, I'm not touching him in my playoffs, so that's why I'm not going to really mention him too much here, but that's what we're looking at dynasty-wise. Jake Ferguson has not been practicing with a calf issue.
Well, I think he was limited on Wednesday in a very light practice session anyway, by most team standards.
But he was non-participant on Thursday.
And then did not practice Thursday. So that is concerning. I mean, Wednesday didn't really do much anyway. So basically, you can call that a DNP. So yeah, that's concerning. That tells me more about where he's not at rather than where he is at. He hasn't been able to get back on the field, so that's not good. Likelihood that he'll play this week with that calf is probably very low.
Yeah, so that's real concerning, because that kind of popped up out of nowhere a little bit. Yeah. But so if he's out, there's not a tight end that you're then going to pick up on Dallas. But what it would do is further consolidate targets to CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. So that's where you kind of get the boost in there. So keep your eye out for that. David Njoku, the guy who's always a warrior. I don't know. I got a bad feeling about him this week.
He's already got 2 no practices this week with this knee injury that he's dealing with. And it doesn't sound like they're optimistic he's going to be ready for this weekend's matchup. So I'm going to put him down as probably a doubtful tag, although we might have an answer sooner.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys, man. It takes a lot for him to miss a game.
Yeah,
it takes a lot for him to miss a game. So this has got to be a really painful injury that he's dealing with. If he's out, and we are expecting that he will be, Fannin already, even with David Njoku on the field, had already started to get 80% of the routes run. That's the mark you want to see for a true starting fantasy football tight end. 2 top 12 guy, just that playing time alone. Then when you mix in the fact that he's had a 27% target share the past 3 weeks, now you're talking about a guy who's squarely a top 10 tight end and potentially even an elite tight end. Basically, if Njoku misses, there's not a chance that Fannin is not inside the top 10 unless the quarterback play is absolutely dreadful and as not good as I think Shedeur Sanders is or isn't. I think he's good enough to get the ball to Harold Fannin, because he's already proven that over the past few weeks. So Harold Fannin, wheels up, make sure you play him. It's like the one Cleveland Brown besides Quinshon Judkins I actually feel really, really good about this weekend. Last but not least, Theo Johnson has been dealing with a toe.
Yeah, they're coming off their bye week, so I'm not overly concerned. He's had enough time to rest. It didn't sound like it was anything serious. He did get a limited session in on Thursday, and from what I read in multiple reports, he's not carrying any designation for the game this weekend. So that usually means that they're going to be good to go come Friday. So it sounds like it's nothing serious.
Good. That's good news. I wanted to bring him up because he's a tight end too. He's a streaming option depending upon what's going on with your situation. Got a nice match against the Washington Commanders, and he was one of the favorite targets of Jackson Dart, who consistently likes to throw the ball in the middle of the field, especially to the big tight end guys. So somebody I want to keep an eye out on.
They've developed a pretty good rapport.
They absolutely have. So kind of want to keep my eye out for that. But that's going to wrap it up for the show. And it's going to wrap it up for this season of Dr. Brian Scott. So Brian, over the offseason, what do you got coming up? What do people need to check out?
Well, I mean, usually in the offseason, I'll try and get some guests on the show, do some interview style podcast episodes. Sometimes I'll take a little bit of a break too, just to kind of recoup and regroup and figure out my game plan heading into next year. I always do a Super Bowl special, so I'll be working on that as well as things get going into the playoffs. And of course, I'm always around, so if you have questions, hit me up, social media, at Injured List Pod on X, the Injured List Pod, or the InjuredListPodcast.com, that Sports Podcast Network. I'll be doing one more show tonight, and then that's it for me for a while. I'll be heading on vacation for the holidays. I'll be back just around New Year time to start watching the end of the regular season and playoffs as a fan and not having to do my injury updates, which would be nice. Maybe a few people will ask me, but it's not nearly as busy. So, but yeah, you can just, tag along my social media. That's where I do most of my updates and information if anything pops up.
Well, thanks again, Brian. It's been a great season with you. Enjoy your Christmas vacation. You guys, make sure you check out Operation Domination on your favorite podcast app and check out our video content on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel at FF Advice Net. I'll be back tomorrow, like I always am, with Chaz Flaherty of Sports Betting Weekly. So we'll line your pockets green. Until then, take care.